This video is on long division of rational expressions. If you look at the green rational expression, which is one polynomial over another or divided by another, it's pretty simple to factor and divide, right? We'd look at the top, x squared plus 9x plus 14, and this easily factors to x plus 7, x minus 2, or I'm sorry, x plus 2. Since the bottom is just x plus 7, the x plus 7's cancel, and we're left with x plus 2. But what happens if that 14 was a 6 in the numerator? All of a sudden, the numerator isn't factorable, and we need a way to be able to divide. Well, long division of polynomials is the way that we're going to do it. Let's refresh our memory about what long division looks like, because for most of us, it's been many years since we've tried it. All right, so you may be given an expression that's a number divided by another number. It's important for you to know the terminology involved here. The number 8, what you're dividing by, is called the divisor. The number that's being divided, in this case 10,764, is called the dividend. And the answer will be called the quotient. These are terms you probably haven't heard in a long time, but it's important that when we're talking about it, you know what the words mean when I say them. Okay, so the first thing we do is look at 8 and how many times it goes into 1 or 2, if we need it, of the first digits of this number. Well, 8 doesn't divide into 1, but 8 does go into 10. It goes in 1 time. Now, there's going to be some leftovers there. So we then, after we divide, we multiply that 1 times the 8, and we put the answer underneath. Then we subtract those numbers, and we get a 2. Well, 8 doesn't go into 2. You can't go the other way around. So we bring down the next number, and that's a 7. 8 does go into 27. How many times does it go in evenly? 8 times 3 is 24, so we put that answer over that next digit, which is the 7. And since 8 times 3 is 24, we'll write that down here so that we can subtract and find out how many we have left over. We bring down again. Whoops, sorry, that's a 6. 8 goes into 36. Well, 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40. So we're going to use the 4 and put that above. Notice your answers always go above. Since 8 times 4 is 32, we write it. We subtract. And we keep bringing down until we have nothing left to bring down. 8 goes into 44 5 times because 8 times 5 is 40. And when we subtract, we have a remainder of 4. Usually we write our 4 with our answer. So 10,764 divided by 8 is 1,345 with a remainder of 4. Now I know it's been a while since you've done that, but the basic sequence is going to be the same for polynomials. We are going to divide, and then multiply, and then subtract, and then bring down. Some people have learned some mnemonic, some phrase to remember. The only way I seem to remember it, or the only thing I've come up with, is dad, mom, sister, brother. Whatever helps you to remember the order is what you should use. When you come to class, you'll see that we have a terminology section at the top of the worksheet, and that will define for you terms like quotient and dividend and divisor and anything else you will need. Make sure that you look at that section on the worksheet. So let's look at how we're going to divide polynomials. First of all, we need to set it up in a similar way to regular long division. The divisor goes outside the house, if you want to call it that, and the other part, the dividend, goes under the house. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to look at this first term and we're going to see how many times it goes into or divides into this first term, m squared. M times what will give me m squared? The answer is m, and you put the answer above. That's our division. All right, then we multiply. So we take that m that we put up here, we multiply it, but now we're going to multiply it to the entire divisor. We're going to distribute it. So m times m is m squared. Remember, the answer to the multiplication goes below. And m times negative 8 is negative 8m. Notice how these like terms lined up. The next step is to subtract. Well, when we're dealing with positives and negatives, we generally change all subtraction to adding the opposite. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to change the sign of all this that I have in green, and we're going to add the opposite. So the opposite of m squared is negative m squared. And I'm going to circle it to indicate that I've changed it. And you'll see why. There's a lot of different signs that will be floating around here. So this negative 8 is going to become positive 8, and I'm going to circle it to remind myself that that's the sign I'm going to use. All right, now that we've changed our signs, we'll add, because we've added the opposite. These should always cancel. If they don't, you've done something wrong. Negative 7m plus 8m is positive 1m. And the next step is to bring down. And so we'll bring down this minus 11. And then we start back at the beginning. Divide m into 1m, or 1m divided by m. Well, of course, that's a 1. 1 times m, we're on the multiplication step, is m, and 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. We multiplied. Now we have to subtract, which again is adding the opposite. So the opposite of m is negative m. I circle it. The opposite of negative 8 is positive 8, and I circle it. These should cancel. They do. Negative 11 plus 8 is negative 3. There's nothing left to bring down. That makes this the remainder. It's important with polynomials that we add our remainder over the divisor. And that's the way you'll show a remainder with polynomials. There's no more r negative 3. You add the remainder over the divisor. All right, so let's review some important tips here. We need to rewrite a problem as long division. So remember that the dividend is what goes under the house, or the first thing in the expression, and the divisor goes outside the house, and that's the second thing in the expression. Also, make sure both expressions are in descending order. It's important for the division to work out that that's the case. Also, make sure any skipped terms are filled in with 0 as placeholders. For instance, if you had m squared plus 9, you would need to rewrite it as m squared plus 0m plus 9. This needs to be here. You need to have it in descending order without skipping anything, so fill in zeros wherever necessary. Don't forget to add the remainder over the divisor to your answer. You can't just leave that remainder out. Now, of course, if there's no remainder, there's nothing to add. If there's a 0 down here at the bottom, it goes in evenly and you're done. Let's look at an example. I would like you to try to pause the video. I hope that you've written down the last one. See what you can do, and we'll go through the steps when you come back. Okay, take a minute and check your work. How did you do? This is pretty tough the first time through, and maybe for a few problems. And so we'll do more of them in class together. But be careful. This 3x to the third divided by x, or what x times what, will give you 3x to the third. You need 3x squared to make up the difference. You take it, you multiply it to each of these, and this is where 3x squared plus 15x squared comes from. Notice I changed the signs and circled them. That makes this come out to negative 1x squared. I brought down a negative 3x, and I divided again. X times what will give me negative 1x squared. I need negative x, because when I multiply this times my divisor, I get negative x squared minus 5x. Notice I changed my signs. I said negative x squared minus 5x, but I changed them to plus and circled them to indicate to myself that I made that change. Add straight down. I have 2x. I bring down a 7. And again, x into 2x, or 2x divided by x. And that's where this plus 2 comes from. Then I take the 2, I multiply it to my divisor. Make sure you distribute every time. I get 2x plus 10. I changed my signs and circled them, so now I have negative 2x minus 10. And when I add here, I get negative 3. Since there's nothing else to bring down, I add my remainder over the divisor. All right, this takes some practice. We'll keep going. If you're, I'm going to skip that one, but if you're in the honors class, I'd like you to try this one and anyone else that would like to challenge themselves. I would like to point out that when this is written, you have c to the fourth, c to the third. We're missing a c squared. And so, like I showed you, or I mentioned earlier in the video, I had to fill in that missing term with a 0 c squared. And the same thing happened in the divisor. I'm missing a plain c term, and so I also filled that in with a 0c. This is challenging and will take some time, even for the honor students, but go ahead and try that, and we'll go over it in class. For the regular class, this is an optional problem. In summary, make sure you fill in any missing terms with 0. I know that that hasn't happened, especially for my regular level class, but it will at all levels, and so we'll need to pay attention to that and know what to do. Remember, dad, mom, sister, brother, or divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. It's a good thing for you to put at the top of your page when you have to do these so that you keep your eye on what step you're on. And this just repeats as many times as you need it. In the subtract step, change the signs and circle them so you don't lose any. Don't try and save too much space, and don't skip that circling step because you're going to not remember whether you're supposed to use the plus or the minus when you get there. Don't forget, add the remainder over the divisor at the end of whatever your quotient is.